Flashpoint is one of my favorite comic book storylines of all time. The reason why it's so special to me is because, as a kid, it was the first time I remember being thoroughly invested in a superhero story. Hell, it was the first time I remember exploring the world of DC at a young age. I remember watching the 2000s superhero movies before, but none of those stories really connected with me. They didn't have the same impact in my life that Flashpoint had. So imagine my excitement when they announced in 2022 that this gym was gonna have a direct sequel. And not only that, but it would follow one of the most badass Batman there is, the Flashpoint Batman. I remember falling in love with this comic the first time I read it. So much so that it actually became my favorite comic book of all time. The story, the characters, the intensity of the comic, it all just felt so alive. But years have passed and opinions change. So I want to know if this holds up 3 years later. So let's revisit Flashpoint Beyond. Like all sequels, in order to understand this story, we have to understand the previous one. Flashpoint Paradox is a story where Barry Allen, the Flash, goes back in time to the very first Thanksgiving.
Dude, stop changing my fucking script!
Fuck you, bitch! I'll do whatever the fuck I want!
Anyways, basically Flash goes back in time to prevent his mother from being murdered. In doing so, a ripple effect went back and forth in time and it changed everyone's history. The world was suddenly suffering from the War of the Amazons and the Atlanteans. Superman's ship never landed in Smallville, but instead crashed into Metropolis and killed 35,000 people. And most importantly, Bruce's parents were never killed in Crime Alley. It was Bruce who died that night. Thomas Wayne beats Joe Chill to death, and overwhelmed with emotion and trauma, Martha goes mad and becomes the Joker. And later on, Thomas is the one that becomes the Batman. As you can see, this world is a hellscape. Heroes are unrecognizable monsters, villains are ordinary citizens, and most of the world is a wasteland, all because Flash changed history. But he goes back in time and fixes this paradox. He allows his mother to be murdered and he accepts history for what it is. Thomas even sacrifices himself to help Barry. But here's where it gets strange. The timeline hasn't changed, and Thomas wakes up in his office. And this is where we begin Flashpoint Beyond. We see Bruce Wayne investigating a lab. All sorts of strange things are in said lab. The Time Sphere and writing about Beyond the Omniverse. He's accompanied by the Mime and Marionette, which I believe were previously featured in the Doomsday Clock. They have a bit of back and forth, but eventually Marionette points out to what Bruce is looking for. A snow globe with Janie Slater's watch attached to it. And before he leaves, he erases a writing on the board that says, "Thomas Wayne will die." The first thing you'll notice when reading this issue is that the art style is different compared to the rest of the comic. I get that this is the first issue and it's supposed to be an epilogue, but still, I personally find the art style to be really ugly and simplistic. I'm not saying that simplicity looks bad. It works on occasions, but this doesn't work for me at all. Sorry. Thomas Wayne wakes up in his office and is told by Judge Dent that he'll be arrested for the murder of Joe Chill. He pleads with Dr. Thomas Wayne to please visit his wife. She's sick in Arkham, and if he doesn't visit her, he'll get a warrant for his arrest. Thomas ignores this completely. He's too into his head. He remembers helping Barry Allen. He remembers the Reverse Flash. He remembers Darkseid's Omega beams. All of this should be a paradox. None of this should be real. But it is. The world is still suffering from the gods' wars. Heroes and villains continue to die. Innocents keep getting caught in the crossfire. And now there's rumors of an alien invasion coming soon. Thomas goes back to the Batcave and searches for Barry Allen's apartment. And he starts growing a nihilistic point of view. Don't get me wrong, Thomas has always been a dick. He's always been cold and pessimistic. But something about this is different. Nothing matters. Why should it matter? None of this is real. And he's determined to change history if it means for Bruce to stay alive and this world to never have happened. He tracks this world's Barry Allen down. He explains that this world is a paradox and he's the only one to prevent it from ever happening. But this Barry obviously doesn't believe it. It's not the same one. This isn't the Barry he met, it's his doppelganger. So instead of trying to convince him, Thomas shoves a needle into Barry and forces him into a chair on top of Wayne Casino, the same chair that gave the Flash his powers. He's forcing Barry to be struck by lightning, and he has all the chemicals to recreate the accident. Barry pleads for Thomas not to do this. This is insane. But again, Thomas remains to be a stubborn prick. Suddenly, the chemicals are shot. Without the chemicals, Barry will simply be struck by lightning, and Barry dies. Thomas's last hope of changing the timeline is dead. He then hears cries and screams from below. It's Dexter Dent in a car fire, and Judge Dent has been shot with a harpoon, the same one that hit the chemicals. Thomas finds the harpoon guy. He tries to question him, but only realizes that he's just a sadistic killer. Thomas refuses to lose control, but fails. In the end, he repeats to himself that this won't matter anyways. Dexter is traumatized, and feeling a sense of responsibility, I guess, Thomas Wayne takes him in. We get back to Bruce in the main timeline, and he's being warned by Corky Baxter that what he's doing will have disastrous consequences. Now we're in issue 1, and the art style is way better this time. It's fucking eye candy now. Thomas and Dexter share a breakfast together. Oswald Cobblepot, who's now Thomas's assistant in this universe, is relieved of how lucky they are. Judge Dent is dead, so the charges are automatically dropped. I guess you can say they dodged one. Unlike Harvey.
Fucking got him!
Thomas leaves Dexter in the care of Oswald. Dexter asks Oswald if he can shoot a gun, and instead of being a reasonable and responsible adult, he just asks, "What kind?" Once in Oswald, always in Oswald, I guess. Thomas then puts on the suit. He explains that since an Atlantean prevented Barry from getting his powers, he'll confront Aquaman directly to see who wanted Barry Allen killed. He loads Joe Chill's gun and leaves. Meanwhile, the world keeps struggling to survive. We see the disastrous aftermath of their wars. New groups of heroes are being formed to stop the Atlanteans' invasions, and people hope that the Superman eventually saves the people, but nothing is directly happening. In Atlantis, we see Wonder Woman strapped in deep waters. Soon she'll be executed, but Thomas prevents that from happening. He explains to Wonder Woman that he isn't there to save her. He also doesn't care about saving the world. It can burn for all he cares. He just needs the lasso of truth for a minute. He wraps the lasso around Arthur's neck, but he reveals that he has nothing to do with the murder of Barry. In a moment of distraction, Wonder Woman plunges Arthur's spear through his chest, and before he dies, she exclaims that she loved him. Thomas leaves before chanting again, "Nothing matters." We then see Oswald and Dexter in target practice, sharing a fucked up bond, if you will. Back in the main timeline, the Flash reveals he feels an interference with the timeline. Bruce pretends not to know what's up with the timeline, and the kid from earlier warns Bruce that his plan will have consequences. So now it's confirmed that Bruce is the one keeping the Flashpoint timeline alive. But why? Back in Thomas's timeline, we find out that the Wayne Casino blew up, and while he was away at Atlantis, 3 more people were killed. People who could originally alter time in Bruce's timeline. And all of the victims were found with clock parts replacing their organs. Now they're naming this killer the Clockwork Killer. Commissioner Gigante, who I now realize used to be Sofia Falcone Gigante in the previous timeline, reveals that Psycho Pirate knows that Bruce was Batman. Thomas finally has a lead. The thing with Psycho Pirate is that no matter how many times people alter the timeline, his memories of his previous life will always stay with him. And they've changed the timeline so many times, he's lived so many lives, that he has no idea what his previous life even was. And everybody believes he's insane for his talks about a dark crisis, infinite crisis, and hypertime. Thomas breaks into Arkham to see him, only to find him hanging from the ceiling. It was staged like a suicide. His trail has gone cold. Before leaving though, he sees Harvey Dent's wife, Gilda Dent. She wants to know how Dexter is doing. Thomas questions her about psychopirates. She heard him being strangled with his own sheets, and she reflects on her late daughter, who met the same fate. She begins to spout about how Thomas was a terrible father, about how he drove Martha insane. Her words hit too close to home, so he smashes the glass, but she thrusts her own head against the glass, completely disfiguring half of her face. She's the new Two-Face. Thomas leaves Arkham pissed. He has more questions than answers, so he finds a group of thugs. In the next page, we get this fucking gorgeous panel. Jesus Christ! You don't need me to comment on this, it's just stunning. I actually love this panel so much that it's actually in my profile photo of my channel. Anyways, he sadistically breaks their bones and knocks them out. One of them seems to be this timeline's Captain Boomerang. He holds a gun at Thomas, and Thomas recklessly lets him aim the gun to his head. He takes the gun, points it at the guy, and repeats to himself, "This won't matter." Before he pulls the trigger, he's thrown into a brick wall by none other than Superman. Once again, the issue ends in the previous timeline, where Corky Baxter... What the fuck? That is a goofy ass panel, Jesus Christ. Anyways, basically Corky's warning Bruce again. Issue 2 opens with the disaster of Metropolis. Clark in this universe wasn't the last surviving Kryptonian of his world. He was sent for a greater purpose. We still haven't found out what though. We come back to Oswald and Dexter. He's now being taught how to pick a lock. Oswald hears the faint cries of the Reverse Flash, but assumes that he imagined those screams. Back in the alley, we see Superman talking to Thomas. "Everything matters," he says. Although this isn't the same Superman, he still holds on to hope, but he's not afraid to take a life. Superman begs Thomas to come with him, but he refuses. So naturally, Superman knocks him unconscious. Back in Arkham, we see that Gilda is going mad. She's hearing voices, just like the other timeline's Two-Face. Two-Face is corrupting her. Thomas wakes up in a forest called the Oasis. It's a refuge for those who can't stand a chance against the fallen heroes. In the Oasis are Ivy, Swamp Thing, and Superman. They reveal why they urgently needed Batman's help. Crystals were found in the wreckage of Metropolis, and within those crystals was a message sent from Jor-El. The reason why Superman was sent here was to weaken the world's infrastructure so that they would be ready for the Kryptonians' arrival, and their arrival is in 5 days. Superman and Ivy try to encourage Thomas to join their team, but he remains a stubborn prick, because once again, nothing matters. The police have found a new victim of the Clockwork Killer, and this one is a bit recognizable. The issue ends with the Time Masters traveling through time, facing waves of blue shift energy. The next issue opens with Gilda fully embracing her scarred face and her new friend in her head. She's now fully become the Two-Face. Thomas breaks into a morgue, examining Eobard Thawne's body. He gets a bit of nostalgia, a sense of belonging in that morgue. After all, he was a doctor. He carefully dissects Thawne and removes the clock pieces from his decomposing body. Meanwhile, in Wayne Manor, Oswald has lost sight of Dexter. He's in the Batcave, and he's not interested in exploring its secrets or finding out the link between Batman and Thomas. He's interested in his gadgets. Picking a lock, learning to shoot a gun. Dexter was preparing himself to break his mother out of Arkham. Oswald reveals this to Thomas, but Thomas is more interested in fixing the clock inside Eobard's body. Oswald's had enough of Thomas's reckless and careless behavior. He's grown fond of Dexter. He lost his father, his sister hung herself, and his mother's now going mad. He doesn't need to see his mother like this. Yet Thomas insists on building the clock. It's believed that once the clock is built, they'll know who the Clockwork Killer is. Dexter successfully frees his mother from her cell, and Thomas and Oswald successfully build the clock. the identity of the Clockwork Killer is revealed. The wall within the cell opens. It was Martha Wayne, aka the Joker. The issue ends once again with Corky warning Bruce, but it's too late. Blue Shift power emerges from the snow globe, space meets time, and this world, this universe will suffer the consequences, all because of the Flashpoint timeline. The next issue begins with... Okay, fuck me, I can't explain this, I'm sorry. I really tried, but I can't. Basically, Mr. Terrific is being interviewed about different realities, and eventually, they start talking about the Omniverse and the Hyperverse, and this is basically an excuse to reference cool characters such as Dr. Manhattan, Gog, the Batman Who Laughs, Pariah. And look, I like these references. I want to eventually read all of these storylines. But goddamn, it's just stupid that it's necessary to read all of this just so I can feel caught up with this new storyline. Like seriously, I gotta read Watchmen, then DC Rebirth, then Tom King's Batman run, then The Button, then the Doomsday Clock, then Jeff Johns' Justice League, Dark Knight's Metal, both omnibuses, and then, like, when the fuck does it end? Anyways, yeah, that's like my only issue with this comic. That and the terrible art style of issue 0. Seriously, this panel looks like Batman pulled out his son from a pool because he pissed on it. Anyways, Batman randomly meets with Ra's al Ghul. Ra's reveals that he's read Kovac's journal. He knows his plans to revive his father's timeline, but he doesn't have much time. Back with Thomas, the puzzle starts to make sense in Thomas's head. Martha's plan all along was to keep him distracted, figuring out the murders while Martha does... what? And how does she know about the previous time travelers and the Flashpoint timeline? Oswald reveals to Thomas that he urgently needs to get to Dexter. Harvey covered most of Gilda's crimes, including the ones against her own children, which means that Dexter's sister never hung herself. She's responsible for her child's death. Thomas breaks into Arkham without a thought and crashes into the ceiling, in one of the most beautiful panels I've ever seen. Through the glass, we can see the alternate timelines, the deaths in the family, the diseased maniac, the loss, the pain, all in one page. It's gorgeous. Martha and Thomas fight. He asks what's the point of the murders. She says that he'll find out soon. Meanwhile, Gilda holds Dexter. Gilda and the Two-Face. Thomas shuts himself in a cell with Martha. He needs to know how she knows. She explains that for some reason, she hid within the walls of Arkham. Maybe it's a statement of how Arkham feels like home to her. I'm not sure, they don't explain it. But she overhears Psycho Pirate talking about Bruce, talking about how this timeline was never meant to be. To prove Psycho Pirate's story, she paid a visit to Jack Oswald White, aka this timeline's Joker. He's a failed comedian with a family, but regardless, they're happy. Happier than their family ever was. She let them live, but it made her angry. Imagine a world where things went right. A world where their boy was still alive. And she says,
"Why, I'd do anything to save Bruce."
She reveals that Psycho Pirate's voice is what led to them meeting.
This world shouldn't be.
She killed everyone who knew how to time travel. She took their knowledge and left a trail of bodies for Thomas to follow, while she built the time sphere. Her plan is to go back in time and ensure that they're the ones who die in Crime Alley, to ensure that Bruce lives. This world is a hellscape, and they believe only they can fix it. What wouldn't a parent do to save their son? The Time Masters arrive at Bruce's Batcave, but Bruce won't let them interfere. The next issue begins with Rip Hunter trying to convince Bruce to let go of the past, to let go of his parents. But Bruce is too determined to succeed. It might be the most important thing he's ever done, and he'll be damned to let this world crumble. Rip tells Bruce that his father's rejecting the timeline anyways. There's no point to this. Just let them go, Bruce. But little do they know, he's a stubborn prick like his father. He allows this to happen. Back in Flashpoint, Martha keeps trying to convince Thomas to help save their son. They can do this together. They can turn their pain and suffering into a bad dream. And all it costs is the entire universe. Thomas takes her hand and kisses her. But he hesitates. What about the people she murdered? What about his employees? Martha once again tries to convince him and asks what's the point. Nothing matters. Gilda then reveals she has her son at gunpoint. If they don't fix this timeline, she'll kill Dexter. Back in the original timeline, Bruce fights the Time Masters, but Rip won't let him risk the universe for a man who's supposed to be dead. What future does this world have? It was born out of grief, pain, loss. The world is gonna be invaded soon. The Amazons are taking over Europe. Thawne's body is vibrating, meaning he's cheated death for like the 15th time. What else is there? The only use this world has is to show us what went wrong. But by going back in time, they can ensure that none of this will ever happen. Thomas reflects for a moment, but he sees Dexter's face. Bruce keeps fighting the Time Masters. They're about to reset the timeline. Thomas now tries to convince Martha to save Dexter. They never had a chance to save Bruce, but they can save Dexter. Martha and Thomas don't have the chance to reflect on this choice. So Gilda makes the choice for them and explodes the time sphere and Arkham itself. She threatens to kill Dexter, but Martha shoots Gilda first. Thomas, Martha, and Dexter leave before the building crumbles on top of them, and all that's left now is them. Thomas, Martha, and Dexter. Despite these tragic circumstances, amongst the rubble, they all hold hands while snow begins to fall. The snow globe is now stable? But why? Because his father proved Bruce right. Bruce put the fate of the universe in his father's hands. He believed that he would accept this universe no matter how dark and twisted it was. In order to be who we are today, our scars have to define us. We can't go back and change what's happened. We can only move forward and embrace the world that is, not the one that could have been. And Bruce was motivated to do this because of his father's letter, the one from Flashpoint. I can't read the whole thing, but trust me when I tell you, there's a reason why Bruce cried while reading the letter. Thomas and Dexter, the new Robin, suit up in the Batcave, and Martha's in a glass box, admiring her boys. It's safe to say that she couldn't be prouder, and she actually looks a little healthier. Kryptonians have invaded most of the world by now, so Martha tells Thomas that if he needs kryptonite, she's got connections, and she shouts,
Let's kill some Kryptonians!
The comic ends with two cliffhangers, one involving the Time Masters, and to this day, I still don't understand it. Thanks, Jeff. And the other one is from the Watchmen universe. Babastis is sniffing on a nostalgia perfume. A character reveals herself to be Cleopatra Pack, and she's looking for the Watchmen. What an incredible story. And yes, it's still my favorite comic book. Say what you want about Jeff Johns, but the man can fucking write. The reason why I love this comic as much as I do is because it has everything I love about a good story. Like I stated earlier, I love the Flashpoint timeline and the Flashpoint Batman, so I'm on board with anything involving them. My favorite types of comics are the Elseworlds and the alternate timeline stories. It's just fun to see who's the villain, who's the hero, and how this impact changed the character's history. I love detective thrillers. I've been meaning to gravitate more towards them because it's always so satisfying for everything to fall into place at the end. And this is an epic detective story. I love the art style. And Jesus Christ, Flashpoint Beyond has my favorite variant covers of all time. Every panel in this comic is fucking gorgeous. Except the epilogue art style. But overall, I love the fact that at the end of the day, this story is about learning to accept reality. Learning to accept the scars that made you. And I love the hope that Bruce has over his father. Even though this world is a hellscape, even though Flashpoint is one of the most nightmarish timelines they've ever seen, Bruce and Thomas still hold hope that a better tomorrow will come. That no matter how low this world has fallen, we can still recover what's left. The unsavable is savable. We can still help those in need, love those in pain, and accept and even love who we are today. That no matter what comes our way, we can still see what's left and admire the snow.